A chilling warning from the judging committee came through the earpiece. Please be mindful of your words during the speech. We do not permit any expressions of a politically sensitive nature here. An immediate hush fell over the auditorium. The only sound was the slight tremble of the microphone in her hand, broadcast live to the world. A 17-year-old girl from the United States had just won the highest honor. As she was about to offer her thanks, simply for saying, "I'm from the United States," she was interrupted. A sign, held up by the technical director, read in 6 stark words, "Revise your identity." She glanced at the large screen across the hall, where the words United States were now obscured by a black bar. She looked out at the hundreds of pairs of eyes in the audience, staring back at her. Her fingers tightened into a fist, her face turning pale. A moment later, she spoke, her voice trembling but firm. "If I cannot say that I am from the United States, then I don't want this award." As those words left her lips, a gray-haired professor seated at the far left of the judges' panel rose from his seat and walked out of the room. A second followed, and then a third. Before we continue, please like this story and leave a comment to let us know where you're seeing this from. Your support is our greatest motivation. The story begins with a girl named Maya. She lived in a historic shotgun house near the banks of the Mississippi River in New Orleans. Her mother was a high school history teacher, and her father, originally an apprentice woodworker, had built a small artisan shop in the French Quarter with his own 2 hands. They weren't wealthy, but their life was filled with an undisturbed peace. From a young age, Maya loved American literature and history. Her heroes weren't pop stars, but the figures in the articles where the words United States appeared on the page. After finishing each piece, she would cut it out and paste it into a thick journal. Beside it, she would write her own thoughts. What do they think of us? What do we think of ourselves? No one told her to do this, and no one rushed her. She just felt that if she didn't record these things, they would truly be forgotten. In middle school, she stumbled upon a dusty old book on American folk art at a secondhand bookstore. The cover featured a female designer, with the headline, "We have no capital, but we have our craft." Maya's eyes lit up. In that moment, she understood that design wasn't just about lines and colors. It could be a vessel for culture and memory. She began to walk a different path from her peers. For 3 years of high school, as soon as the final bell rang, she would head straight to her father's shop. While other girls were studying for the SATs, she was carving patterns into blocks of wood, one sliver at a time, folk art motifs, historical symbols, even the shop's nameplate. Her teachers warned her not to be overly idealistic. Her classmates laughed, saying her obsession with wood had no future. She remained unchanged, simply bowing her head and continuing her work. But her mother, without a word, secretly bought 2 blocks of fine Louisiana cypress and placed them by her bed on her birthday. At 18, she created a piece titled Crescent City Light. It was a uniquely shaped wooden lantern. The outer shell was inspired by the intricate wrought iron balconies of the French Quarter. Its internal structure consisted of layered, translucent wooden panels. Each time the lamp was lit, 50 unique American patterns would appear, one for each state. The shifting light was like the nation's vibrant history and the flowing shadows of time. She uploaded photos of her work to the internet, originally just as a personal record. She never expected an American art professor living in Europe to share it. The professor wrote beneath the photo, "I see a young person from the New World speaking in a quiet, powerful way." After that, everything accelerated. She received a notification that her work had been selected for an international youth creativity competition. Not only would her piece be sent abroad for exhibition, but she herself was invited to attend the awards ceremony. She was incredibly nervous. Before leaving, she carefully hand-lettered business cards. On them, she wrote, "Maya, United States, Folk Art Design." The script was the same one she had practiced in her journal. She never imagined that her simple writing would be considered a sensitive term overseas. On the 3rd day after arriving at the event, she handed her card to the staff member at the registration desk. The woman looked at it for a moment, then frowned. "This is written incorrectly," she said. Maya was stunned. "Where is it wrong?" The staffer lowered her voice. "You can't write United States. You need to change it to North America, or just write your city name directly. Otherwise, it will affect the organizer's neutral stance." After hearing this, Maya didn't argue. She just nodded lightly, took her cards back, and turned away. Back in her room, she sat for a long time, then stacked the cards one by one, tied them with a string, and placed them at the very bottom of her suitcase. She didn't change the cards. and she didn't hand any more out. That night, she flipped through her old journal for a long time. Finally, on a blank page at the back, she wrote, "If you cannot say who you are, then creation has no meaning." On the day of the competition, she wore a simple linen dress and walked onto the stage to present her Crescent City Light. Her delivery might not have been perfect, but every word came from the heart. She explained that the ironwork patterns on the outside represented the history of her city, and the 50 patterns inside represented the diversity of her country. She said she hoped this piece could be a light, shining a name that had been obscured. The audience was silent at first, then erupted in applause. A judge from Eastern Europe, his eyes glistening with tears, said, "I see a child from one culture speaking to the world." During the award ceremony, she was announced as the winner of the grand prize. An official handed her the certificate. She bowed her head, preparing to give her thanks. She had only intended to say one sentence, "I'm from the United States." Before the words were even half formed, the warning sign appeared from backstage. The staffer held it up. "Revise your identity." She froze. Then she saw the gray-haired professor who had smiled encouragingly at her earlier now, looking down at the floor. She turned to the audience again, those faces full of expectation, the flashing cameras. Finally, she took a deep breath and spoke the sentence that silenced the entire hall. "If I cannot say that I am from the United States, then I don't want this award." The first to rise from the judges' panel was the gray-haired professor. He slowly removed his judge's badge and walked off the stage. A second followed, and then a third. Some people clapped, some were stunned, some bowed their heads and wept. But she remained on the stage, holding the stack of business cards she had never distributed. On them was written, "United States, Maya." As Maya walked off the stage, her palms were still slightly damp, as if she had just stepped out of the eye of a storm. It was silent backstage. No one stopped her, and no one approached her. For a moment, her hand-lettered cards that said United States had become like an invisible wall, temporarily separating her from the entire world. But what she didn't know was that as she walked off stage, the live broadcast was hastily cut. Still, countless viewers had taken screenshots, sharing and commenting. That scene was already seared into people's minds. An hour later, the International Design Competition's organizing committee issued a statement, saying a contestant had violated the rules regarding contestant speech and that the prize was currently suspended. On social media, the girl who said United States quickly became a top trending search term in multiple regions. People didn't know who she was, only that she wore a simple dress, her voice was calm, and at her brightest moment, she had cast aside the highest honor just to say those words. Some called her a stubborn fool, others praised her as a courageous warrior. Many were searching for her true identity. But in her room, everything was unusually quiet. She didn't know she had become a focal point, nor did she know that a group of judges had collectively submitted their resignations, accusing the organizers of interfering with free speech and distorting cultural expression. She just sat in a corner, gently wiping her Crescent City Light, as if caressing an old, unfinished conversation. And in the United States, far away, it was the middle of the night, but the lights were on in the old artisan shop by the Mississippi. Her father was watching the news, constantly wiping his glasses. He said nothing, just stared at the frozen image before the broadcast was cut. His daughter, standing under the lights, her expression calm, a fire in her eyes. Her mother sat beside him, her voice trembling slightly. She really did it. They had always known Maya was not one to compromise. She would stay up all night to correct a folk art pattern 5 times and lose a night's sleep over a piece of wood with the wrong grain. But they never thought she would make such a decision on a global stage. "She's still just a kid," her mother murmured, tears welling in her eyes. "She's not a kid anymore," her father said, shaking his head gently. "She understands better than we do what can't be compromised." The next morning, Maya walked out of the hotel. The sun was brighter than the day before. She had packed her bags, ready to go home. No one came to see her off, and no one stopped her from leaving. It wasn't until she reached the airport security entrance that a stranger stopped her. He handed her a letter, briefly introducing himself as an associate professor from a European design college. He said they wanted to feature her story and her work as a case study in their curriculum. "You made us realize that some design isn't just decoration," the man said slowly, in English. "It's an article of faith." She paused for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you." As the plane took off, she leaned against the window, watching the clouds drift by. She remembered being a child, flying a kite on the levee by the Mississippi River. The wind was strong then, and her kite would often soar very high. Her mother would shout from below, "Don't let it go too high, the string might break." But she always thought that once a kite was flying high, even if the string broke, it wasn't a failure. The night she landed, American media were already waiting outside the airport, but she gave no interviews, simply bowing her head and walking quickly away. It wasn't until she was in a taxi that the driver turned around, looked at her and asked, "You're Maya, the one who made that lamp, right?" She smiled slightly and nodded. The driver was quiet for a moment, then said, "My father was a woodworker. I understand your lamp. Thank you." For the rest of the ride, the driver didn't turn on the radio or say much else, just drove her safely to her door. Online, images and slides of her presentation began to spread like wildfire. People found the old folk art design book she had read, sought out videos of her woodworking process. Some even flew to her New Orleans neighborhood to film the alleyways her lamp might have illuminated. More and more voices joined into a single chorus. She just said who she was. A few days later, a quiet press conference was held, initiated by the judges who had resigned. They didn't defend themselves, but announced they were jointly establishing a Freedom of Cultural Expression Award. The first and only recipient was Maya. "We cannot change her rescinded prize," they said, "but we can make sure she is truly heard." And in her family's artisan shop, she continued to carve, piece by piece. Her mother asked her, "Aren't you going to prepare something to say?" She replied, "I've already said it." Her mother was stunned. "When?" She smiled, pointing to the lamp. "It will keep shining until no one is afraid to say their own name." Maya never defended herself. The phrase "I don't want it" seemed to become a brand on her. Wherever she went, she would be recognized, then scrutinized. But she was no longer nervous, nor did she try to avoid it. She learned to work with her head down and learned to meet people's gazes with her head up. One morning, she was sanding a piece of wood in her workshop when she heard quick, heavy footsteps outside. She opened the door to see a middle-aged woman anxiously holding out a wooden box. Inside was an old photograph of a lantern. "Can you remake this for me?" the woman asked, her eyes holding a cautious plea and an unspoken persistence. Maya took the photo and studied it. "I've seen this lamp before. It's an old design that used to hang in front of my aunt's house when I was a child. It was destroyed in a fire along with the house. No one ever rebuilt it." She nodded gently. "The way it lives in your memory, I'll try." 2 months later, the Beacon Project quietly began. It was a workshop project. Maya started herself, not for commercial design, but to restore old, forgotten lamps from memory. She accepted no international interviews and made no more public appearances, but the serial number of each lamp, its materials, and its story were meticulously recorded. "I don't want the United States to just be a name people argue about," she said. "It should be a light." The workshop didn't advertise or promote itself on any platform, but every week it received over 100 handwritten letters. Some sent photos of their childhood rooftops. Some included fragments of a paper lantern their mother used as a wedding decoration. And some simply sent a message: "Please help me keep this memory, even if it's just a shadow." And at the international design platform she had left, the new competition arrived on schedule. But this time, the list of judges had 7 empty seats. The organizers were forced to amend the rules, adding a section on respecting cultural heritage and identity. A campaign began, calling for the reinstatement of Maya's award. The reason: politics should not be placed above culture. The petition surpassed 1 million signatures in 3 days. That screenshot was edited into countless short videos, with the title, "She Refused an Award for 2 Words," spreading across video platforms. In the comments, someone wrote, "I used to be afraid to write USA in the nationality field, worried it would cause trouble. But now I know those words aren't just on a passport. They're about the stance we choose to take." One day, her old high school in New Orleans held a special lecture and invited Maya to share her story. She initially didn't want to go, but after receiving an invitation signed by the students, she decided to make the trip. When she stood on the stage, she wasn't facing experts or professors, but young faces, still innocent but with a bright spark in their eyes. "You all want to hear the story of me losing the award, don't you?" she began with a self-deprecating smile. The students didn't respond, but one girl raised her hand and said, "We want to hear why you were willing to have nothing rather than change those words." Maya was silent for a moment. "Because when I was little, I always felt that the United States was a name in the bottom left corner of the map, about to fall off. No one cared if it was a country, a home, or just a punctuation mark. I wanted it to become a starting point." The room was quiet for a moment, Then applause thundered. A student was secretly wiping away tears. As she was leaving the stage, a boy handed her a piece of paper. On it was scrawled, "Thank you for making it so I don't have to hide anymore." Time passed slowly. She never returned to the international stage, but her Beacon project was cited as a model for youth social practice around the world, written into university textbooks. Some said she destroyed her own future. Others said she used one lamp to illuminate a place far away, and she herself simply continued to carve, day after day. At night, when the heritage lamps in the old alleyways lit up, she would look out her window and see passers-by stop, look up, and then continue on their way. She knew that lamp wasn't shining for her. It was shining for all the people who had once been asked to rewrite themselves, carving out a space for them. At the end of that day, she wrote a sentence in her journal. "Identity isn't a label, it's a warmth that can't be erased." Her mother happened to see the journal. She wasn't surprised. She just closed it gently, walked outside, and casually turned on the lamp in the alley. Its light shone on the wooden window frames, just like the flashlight she used to secretly turn on under the blankets as a child, warm, not dazzling, but never extinguished. Do you like stories like this? Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment telling us which moment moved you the most. Your support is our greatest motivation in telling the stories of voices that go unheard.